Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Duthie Aquatics. In this episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my plant grow rack behind me, specifically in relation to doing a dry start for your aquarium, because I put in some tissue cultures to plant out some new rootstock for my business, and the way I propagate my plants in the plant domes is essentially the same way you would do a dry start method for your aquarium. So I thought this is very relevant for a lot of people that struggle with culturing the tissue cultures into a dry start aquarium, or just in general if you struggle with tissue cultures. Hopefully this video will make it a bit easier for you. So let's get into it. So this is the dome that I've selected. So I've planted out the back here, and as you can see, the Aquasoil that I've got in here is dried out a little bit. I need to add way more water to this dome. So when you see Aquasoil and you're touching it and it's still quite dry, like if you're looking from above, it looks like it's still damp. You'll find the Aquasoil will dry out quite quickly, even with a lid over there. So you will need to give it a decent amount of water to start. I'm a bit slow to start filming this, so these guys are kind of struggling a little bit, but there's a Hygrophila pinnatifida at the back here, and this is bulbitis that I'm going to try and grow here, and just one little piece of Anubias. So to start off with, before you plant anything, you've got your Aquasoil into your aquarium. You can do this with a dirted aquarium as well, but I think most people, if they're going to use tissue cultures, they're probably bought Aquasoil, and all you've got to do is wet the Aquasoil enough that when you go like that, it's not standing water at the bottom here, but you can see definitely the moisture starting to build up and all around there. So I'll get a watering can and I'll show you what that kind of looks like. So ordinarily, a lot of people would get something like a spray pack and spray down the Aquasoil first. In my personal opinion, it's inadequate when you're initially starting. You will definitely need a spray pack in the future, but just to initially get your Aquasoil wet, you're going to need to pour in a bit more than what your spray bottle is going to do quickly. So that looks like a heap of water, but as you can see, it quickly just absorbs and disperses. So it's flowing all the way down to the back here, and you can see the color change in the Aquasoil. And this is stuff I have previously sprayed down with the spray bottle. Now you may have noticed that underneath here, it goes down into some actual dirt or potting mix. So I have layered some potting mix initially in here first, and then I've put in the Aquasoil. You don't need to do that for your dry start aquarium. Obviously, I've just done this because these are going to be permanently set up in a high humidity environment rather than being fully submerged. And the reason why I do that, I bet you'll be the one time I open the dome and I won't see any. These little insects on the side here are a type of springtail, and you'll naturally find them occurring in bags of potting mix. And they're very important if you are setting up any of these styled domes or anything for propagating plants, Bucephalandra or what have you, because what they do is they start to eat any of the dying foliage off the plants. So having them in here just helps break down any leaves and stuff, and the potting mix that breaks down in here, and capping them off with the Aquasoil just makes it a lot easier for you to plant in your rootstock and stuff like that. So that's why there are potting mixes in these, if you were wondering. It's all highly technical. But as you can see, when I scrape this away, there's a little bit of standing water, but not too much, and all of the side here is wet. This stuff doesn't really matter so much because I spray that down with the spray pack, but that's what you want to look. So it's not like an actual puddle of water, but you can see the water has been enough to sit at the bottom just a little bit like that, and that's exactly what you want when you're doing a dry start method. So the next thing to do will be to select the tissue cultures. I did previously go to film this video, and as you can see, I waited too long. My tissue cultures didn't make it, so I'm not making that mistake again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get two plants. I've got Hygrophila lancia, and I've got Rhenicii Red Mini, which is Alcinanthera Red Mini, the full name, sorry, I was trying to remember. It looks very similar to this. This is not it, this is Telenanthera. I do have one of Alcinanthera Red Mini at the back there. That culture I've had for a couple of years now, so it's starting to get a bit long in the tooth, so I nearly need to reset it. And sorry, after I've flooded it, there is one of the springtails that was just here. It's just hidden behind some of the dirt now. Where is it? If you see the little insect in there, that's a springtail. It was right here. Somewhere around here, you'll see him kind of mincing around. But that's what you want in a plant dome, just to help with the ecology of everything. So let's get some tissue cultures. When you get your tissue culture, it should look something like this. This is a good way to start to look have an idea of what you're looking at when you're seeing a tissue culture. You can see that the jelly in here, is a little bit discolored, so it's no longer clear like this. So what that jelly is actually an agar mix. It's got all the nutrients and stuff that the tissue cultures need to establish. You can see some of the leaves on the bottom here have died because this tissue culture is starting to get a bit old, which is what that discoloration in the agar will tell you, because the root systems are spreading out and all that. But what you want to look for is when you're buying a tissue culture, they usually have them all stacked up, something like that. You'll see a whole bunch of them. They may or may not have a light over them, depending where you're buying them from. And quite often people see it, they have no idea what it is. They read tissue culture, gee, I wonder what that is. Open the lid, which I can't do one-handed. Open the lid, they look at it, and when they're looking at it like that, they're breathing on it. And what that does is that means this sterile environment, which is what they use in any laboratory to culture samples, whether it be bacteria or what have you, will be put into this environment. And so what that means is bacteria from their breath will start to colonize, and that will make this go moldy very quickly. When you see the mold appearing in here, it's not a total loss for the plant, but if you're buying your own tissue culture, do a thorough check and make sure there's no mold growing in there, because that's just going to mean you're setting yourself backwards for your tissue culture. So avoid anything like that. This one you can see I've had for a little while, so it's grown up to the surface quite a bit. They're usually not always this full. Sometimes they look more like better miniatures of this just in a tissue culture, and anything from this or similar to that is fine to use. And all you're going to do is you're going to remove the tissue culture from the cup, and it will take the jelly out with it at the same time. So to remove the tissue culture from the cup, what you want to do is grab your hands on the side, squeeze it, see how it lets the air in like that. You can kind of shake it free a little bit. It's easy with two hands, and at the same time start pulling the plants up. So I'll do that off camera. And just like that, your tissue culture will be out and it's brought the jelly up with it. Now what will happen is with this agar, you want to remove it before you start dividing up your plant and planting it out in your dry start. And the easiest way to do that is get a container of water and just kind of give it the old shake and flick, and that's the best way to get the agar off, because it will start to dissolve in the water. So I've already shaken it off a bit, but that's literally all you got to do. And you can see there's hardly any in there on the root systems now. And then all you've got to do to finesse the last of the jelly off there, just leave it in there, and then with your fingers just kind of roll it backwards and forwards between your index finger and your thumb, and that'll get most of the jelly off. It doesn't matter if you haven't got 100% of the agar off the root system, because close enough is good enough in this situation. And there you go. Now when I did that, it did partially divide up the plants, but we'll break it up into a couple. So that's one, it's two, it's three. You would be able to divide it up much better with two hands. I'll see if I can do it into maybe 4 or 5 pieces, but I'll have to do it off camera and just show you how small to do them. So I've just divided them up into 5 pieces. This is probably the worst divide that I've done, because you can see there's only 2 stems in here. It shouldn't make a difference now that these plants are more mature, but there is a phenomenon with tissue cultures, because I did do a little bit of a a stint in a tissue culture lab once. Unfortunately, I didn't get to have that as a career prospect because it was too far away. But there was a phenomenon that did happen when you were culturing the tissue cultures, because what happens is they start with a single plant and they divide it up into lots of little pieces and put it into the nutrient-rich agar. When you have the tissue culture specimens too far apart inside the agar culture, the plants, when they are growing, they don't sense the other plants around them, because plants are actually able to perceive things in a rudimentary sense, such as acacias and all that. They can warn other acacias that they're being preyed upon by things like giraffes and all that. What happens is we refer to it as like depression, or they get sad. So when the plants feel like they're all by themselves and there's not much hope in that agar, even though they've got everything they need to grow, they, for whatever reason, give up on life and die. So you don't want to have them as too small of a cutting. Little clumps like this are perfect, and then all you got to do, plant it in like that. It's very hard with one hand, and that's it. So you space it out to where you want it. So these are all going to be kind of in rows, because rows are really great when you're growing plants for propagation purposes. In your aquascape, you may do it differently. This one I'm going to put kind of closer to the other ones, and what will happen, as you will see, especially with Alton Interior Red Mini, all up the stem here, they get little roots on there. So you can even lay it down like that if you want it to spread out and become a denser thing, a denser plant on your dry start. It just depends on how long you want your dry start to take to grow in, and what your budget allows for, because obviously when you've got them like that, they look more spectacular growing up. But if you want them to fill out a bigger area, laying them out and covering over the root systems and letting the rhizomes, or the aerial roots off the stem, take root into other places, will definitely fill in the areas a lot better. So that's pretty much as hard as it is. Now, after you've got them planted in there, even though this is all wet, what you want to do is you want to get your mister and then just spray them down. Doesn't matter if you want to give them a rainstorm, you can just keep spraying them down. I recommend, obviously, this has got a Perspex lid that goes over this like that, and I've got the humidity controls all closed, so this is at maximum humidity. When you do your tank, it's very likely that you're going to have a glass lid. That's not going to be enough to create humidity. You are going to need to get cling wrap to go over the opening, so that the humidity stays at maximum. There's a few tricks that you can do if you're not going to be around to be able to mist them morning and night, or through during the day, because you do need the moisture to be hitting them to encourage them to actually stay wet and grow, especially with the Aquasoil, that will start to dehydrate quite quickly. Now, I've just got a little container of water. If you aren't able to be around to keep misting your plants and keep the moisture up and the humidity up and everything, all you need to do, shallow container of water and an air stone or whatever, and when you put that in there, see how it starts to bubble like that? It works a lot better if you've got higher airflow and a air stone. But what the idea is, using a shallower than this container, is have that in the center or near your plant, so it's splashing water up. And the reason why this one's better than, say, like a pump, a water pump, is because if a water pump is left out of water for ages, just sucking in air, they get quite hot, and you don't want to have a potential fire risk in your house. So air stone's a great little way to get around that in a shallow container full of water, just splashing water up in amongst the plants. Now, you'll know your plants are doing well if the leaves always have that sheen and you can see the moisture on the sides of the glass or on their lid or whatever. That means obviously they are indeed wet enough. And what you're doing when you do this is, by keeping the moisture up to them, you can even if you've got a bigger tank and you're doing a dry start, you can get the mist setting on your garden hose and just mist them down every day. what you're doing is you're simulating a rain event, and by spraying them down 3 times a day if possible. You can spend a minute doing it, you can spend 5 minutes spraying them down. That's not really going to hurt the plants. All you're doing is you're mimicking a rain event, and what happens then is consistently doing that, you're tricking the plants into thinking it's the wet season. The root systems are slowly getting more and more moist, which they will detect. They'll start to change the nature of the growth that they have on their roots. And they will also start to change the nature of the growth of their leaves. This is important because that's the difference between, say, a hydroponically grown plant adapting to being fully submerged or having a huge melt back after you fill up the tank. So you can see these plants, I've got to mist them down, but all their root systems quite healthy, growing into Aquasoil down here. They will have no problem converting into an aquarium if I just dump them in right now. So you can see all the leaves and everything, really nice rich colors. They're not showing any flowers or budding or anything like that, because they know if they try to flower or bud into the water, it's going to go nowhere for their propagation. So they've switched to an aquatic growth, and that's what you want for your dry start. So misting them down frequently is a very good idea. Spend at least 2 minutes a day misting them down. If possible, spend 6 minutes a day doing it, obviously in three different segments. Do it 1 in the morning, 1 midday, and 1 in the evening. If you can't do that because work commitments or whatever, at least try to do it before you go to work and when you get home from work. And that's literally as hard as it is to do a dry start for your aquarium and get a tissue culture converted. I can hear someone already asking, but how do you do a tissue culture into an already established aquarium? So that's where our next tissue culture is going to come in. So there is an easy way to do it. It can sometimes fail depending on the bacterial load in your aquarium and how well you've washed off the alga from your plant's root system. But this is a general method of how I find is the most effective in my experience for getting the tissue culture just to work in your aquarium, especially if you know nothing about plants, you bought your tissue culture and you just want some nice plants in your aquarium. Now again, I've just got my tissue culture out. You can see the alga on this is really clear because this is a much newer tissue culture, and the plant's obviously a lot smaller than the alternative theory here I read mini. So this one will work just fine for this demonstration. Get it in the water again, shake off the alga. It may take a little bit more finessing with newer alga than the older one, because obviously there's no roots that have been breaking down the bonds of the alga and sucking out the nutrients. So you may need to just spend a little bit longer giving it the old British nanny treatment of shaking it. And yeah, so most of the alga's off, but we can do a little bit better. Just finesse the last of it off with your fingers. I hope you enjoy looking at my hairy arms. So again, close enough is good enough. For this one, because it's a lot smaller of a tissue culture, I'm probably only going to break it into 3. So just make the judgment call yourself. You'll kind of work out what's good to do, but I'd say 3 is probably the best I'll do for this. So I got 3 pieces in here. Depending on how big your aquarium is, will kind of determine how well this works. You just get a container, and if you can, wedge it between the glass and your aquarium, and you're going to get some of your gravel or your Aquasoil from your aquarium that you've got in here, and you're going to put it into your container and just plant your plants in this. And all you'll do from there, so I'll get some gravel. Now I just set my tissue culture plants on the concrete, which is going to be absorbing moisture off them, which is not the ideal situation, but I've got my container. I put in enough gravel that I can put the plants in here. As you can see, stirred up the tank at the same time. Just going to bury these in here like that, so that the root systems are in place. And as you can tell, this is, I'm assuming, you know, if you're doing this, you maybe don't have Aquasoil, so we'll do it with an inert substrate such as the pea gravel. There will be some detritus and all that still in here with the handfuls of gravel that I've put in. Now sit this on top of the container because nothing could possibly go wrong if I do that. You can either use fish tank water or you can just get some tap water, and all you're going to do is put enough water in here. All the water in here so that the plants are submerged. There's a little bit of foliage sticking out from there, but I'm going to say that's probably good enough. So you see there's very little water in here, so when you stick it into your aquarium, hopefully, but not hopefully, it'll float if you can anchor it in position so it's under the light. And all you've done then for these plants is simulated a small flash flood. They've been inundated with water, but they're close enough to still nearly break the surface. They should start converting their growth to fully submerged growth, and you can slowly keep topping up the water day by day, just a little bit so they stay submerged. And then obviously after the plants start establishing and growing quite well, just take them out. They'll have good root systems by then. Plant them where you want in the tank. It might take a week or two, but they will start to get some good growth. I'm going to leave these in here as an example so we can see how they progress over the next few weeks, because unfortunately my phone's running out of storage space. But I've just bought a new computer, so hopefully I can edit these videos a lot better. The next one I need to bring you guys is on breeding paradise fish. So I hope you enjoyed. I'm sweating my ass off because it's extremely hot in here, and I will see you guys in the next one.